So, welcome to Bodhicitta Dakini Monastery. This is a talk on death and rebirth, and the groaning is not a strange Buddhist person, but a greyhound. Just, think of it as enthusiastic support groaning. So, um, so death and impermanence and rebirth it's something Buddhists usually, in theory, feel comfortable with. But of course, the reality of actually dying, of actually leaving the world and realizing that everything you've created for your life is a dream, is impermanent, that you can't take any of it with you, being told you're going to die, that reality is a bit different to just, kind of mapping out what you believe might happen when you die. I know this because I have lymphoma and I've been told I have maybe 15 to 20 years to live. But, I could live almost a normal lifespan, but just need treatment. It's hard to say. But I know is that I can't take for granted that I will have a long life. And I thought I had this whole thing of death and impermanence down pat, but it is pretty shocking when you have all the things you based your life on, certain plans in the future, this sense that we're going to be here forever, which, let's face it, most of us have, and all the things we fight for. We fight for our children, and we fight for a good life, and we save money, and we have a set of beliefs. This identity is fairly strong in us. We fight even people are willing to fight for this identity, whether it's a country or a religion or a family, whether it's actual warfare or whether it's just going to work and facing the rat race and just fighting to survive. That inclination in us is strong. That desire, fight against the dying of the light. But death is the price we pay for life, and everything runs in cycles. You can't have life without death. You can't have change, without the cycles of life. And we are no different from the autumn leaves, and the flowers and the snow on the mountain, the seasons. We're no different. So, yeah, if we understand that we're actually not separate from nature, we're part of nature, and that we also must give way to new life, then, maybe it's easier to accept death. But in truth, it's still going to come as a shock. And Buddhist monks and nuns say this thing every day. I am of the nature to grow old and die. I am heir to my karma. I receive the fruits of my actions, basically. And why are Buddhists mindful of death? Are they some kind of pessimists, some kind of masochists? Do they have no joy in life? Are they anti-life? Are they guilt-ridden, miserable, pessimistic people? Not really. It's because by accepting the truth, you're empowered to live fully. By accepting the truth of impermanence, you grasp every moment of life left to you with a full and open heart and a sense of joy and a sense of freedom and liberation, in the sense that I know I could die at any time, and therefore every day I have is a gift. Every day is precious. And, it gives the finality of life makes you live more fully, make sure you um, don't just get numb and comfortable and kind of a bit dead inside. And I think that's the problem a lot of uh, people in the modern world have, you know, that we're just trying to get comfortable, but we're not really living. We're not really fully alive. We're not mindful. We're not, you know, really tasting our tea. We're not really asking the important questions. We're not being vibrant, you know, and fully facing life in terms of, you know, the world's craze with mindfulness doesn't just mean being happy and comfortable. It means facing the difficult truths as well as the beautiful ones. You know, yes, the autumn leaves are beautiful. Yes, the blossoms are beautiful. But in order to have those cycles of life, there must be death, you know. In order for the beautiful, cute babies and puppies and flowers to arrive, there must be change. There must be the old making way for the new. And every moment of life, whether it's the death of cells, you know, I think they say it takes 3 months for every cell in our body to be reborn and die. You know, death is happening right in the midst of life, but we just don't notice it, you know, and we're slowly dying all the time. We just don't notice it, you know. But from the day we're born, we have the seed in us to die. We have, because it is the price we pay for this life, you know. Now, in terms of what traditional Buddhism says about death and rebirth, there are different, like Tibetan Buddhism is very specific, and whereas Theravada is a little bit more, you know, more broad strokes, not so nitty gritty. And the thing is, it's very important for you to always test whatever teachings you're given as a goldsmith tests gold, you know, hammer it out, narrow it down, you know, melt it down, digest it for yourself so that what feels true for you is there in the end. That doesn't mean that we should just dismiss things if they don't match our experience, because our experience evolves over time. But we keep a maybe so mind. We keep an open mind, you know. So if you really look at life, you see that we are just a phenomena, a temporary, a relative self that exists upon like a house of cards, upon causes and conditions, a sandcastle, if you will. Take away the non-you elements, like you appear solid and relatively you function. This person with your name has to pay tax and pay parking fines and speeding fines, and if you don't, there will be consequences. So there's that relative existence, but ultimately this self is lacking in a true existence because it is impermanent. What are the non-you elements? Your parents, the people who educate you, as you know, the culture you're born into, the gender you're assigned, the farmers who grow your food, the builders who build your house, the bus driver, the school bus driver, the wars fought in Iraq for the oil in your car, the sun and the rain and the rivers. The ice on the road could even be a non-you element. It might be an undoing you element, you know, or too much heat. Your ancestors' DNA, you know, and the story that came before you, the conditions, the socio-economic, spiritual, cultural conditions you're born into. And you grow, we are conditioned beings, we are affected by our environment and develop psychologically according to our genetic inheritance, as well as our, you know, nurture, nature inheritance, and how we're raised and what is happening in the world Like the people who grew up in the Second World War have a very different psychological makeup to the people who grew up in the 60s and the people who are growing up now. You know, everybody is a product of their time and their culture. So take away one of these elements. It's a bit like a rug, you know, you pull out one thread, but the whole thing comes undone. Like if the school bus carrying you to school or the bus carrying you to work one day has a crash, no more you. And you're pulled out of this life like a hair from a butter, the Tibetans say. They love a lot of analogies with butter. Butter was a very important part of life in Tibet when it's cold. So, or, you know, take away, say your parents never met, no more you. Say there is a famine, the crops fail, I don't know, all the bees die, no more you. Say the sun explodes, no more you. Say there is no rain, no water, no more you. You know, say, you know, one of your parents is traumatized or mentally unstable and abuses you to the point where you die, no more you. So these causes and conditions create what appears to be a solid entity, but this entity is so fragile, you know. Yeah. So this is what when in Buddhism we say there is no self, no soul, we don't mean like nihilism, like there is nothing, just a big black hole, or that we don't mean that there isn't a relative self that receives the results of karma and functions in the world. Because we could say, you know, everything is emptiness, but the building is still here and karma is still functioning for unenlightened beings. So we have to take care of relative existence. We have to keep ethics and have compassion and, you know, make the world a better place and do good things, because there is consequences for unenlightened beings who are still in the wheel of birth and death. But emptiness is not annihilation. Emptiness means fullness. It means because this arises, it caused by this, and so on and so forth, until infinity. So emptiness of a permanent unchanging self means a fullness of all of the universe. Like you are empty of a permanent unchanging self, but you are full of non-self elements. The sun, the rain, the earth, they're all part of you. They're your second self. And those non-self elements in turn are empty of a separate unchanging nature, because they are conditioned and they are connected, right? And so on and so forth in this infinite web of interbeing, cause and effect. So the concept of emptiness is a Mahayana concept. In Theravada, they don't worry too much about what is beyond the self. They just talk about suffering and its end to reach, purifying bad karma, purifying the mind, purifying delusion, becoming free of birth and death, an arhat, and not born into the world again, like the Buddhist students. Whereas the Mahayana is like, hey, you know, there is a bigger option, which is to become a spiritual warrior, a bodhisattva, which is the path the Buddha followed, which is the path of the 6 perfections: generosity, moral conduct, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. And with the wish of bodhicitta, the wish, you know, all beings have been my mothers in countless lives. They are many and I am just one. So I will work for the liberation of all beings, not just myself, however long it takes. As long as space remains, as long as there are those who suffer, may I too remain to remove the darkness of the world. And ironically, because of this great compassion and this wish to liberate others from suffering and help them attain final enlightenment, one is more quickly gets enlightenment and becomes a Buddha and has powers to benefit others. And when one attains enlightenment, I mean, we usually don't talk about it too much, because it's like talking about something it's like ants talking about what the life of humans is like. But from a Mahayana point of view, you could say the Buddhas appear in the world in countless forms, in countless ways. Like one Buddha can appear in countless forms, in countless ways, because they've gone beyond the concept of oneself and karma. So they may appear in the world just like the full moon appears in 100 buckets of water on a full moon night. They can appear in any body of water or reflective surface. So a bodhisattva enters into the world according to a way that will benefit others. So they could be a social worker or a sex worker or a mother or a monk. You know, there could be so many things. And we don't know who is a Buddha or a bodhisattva, so it's good to be nice to everyone. Yeah, so the Buddhist idea is that there is life after death. But it's not quite the same as Hinduism. Hindus believe in a God and they believe in a self, and they believe the self reincarnates, right? Whereas Buddhists don't use the term reincarnate because it has the concept of something inherent, not changing, which Hindus would call the Param Atman, the higher self, which a lot of New Age people use that concept as well. And that, I mean, I think Christians would probably equate that with the soul, this concept that there is this essence in you that is unchanging. Buddhists use the term rebirth, and they say it is just a subtle mind-body continuum, like a stream. The river Ganga starts in the Himalayas in Gangotri as ice, and then it melts, and then it comes down, and then it goes through the Himalayas, and then it becomes this raging torrent, and it it's a beautiful turquoise color in Rishikesh, and then it becomes this big brown polluted, huge slow moving, depending on the time of year, thing in Varanasi, and filled with pollution. So you can really never put your foot in the same river twice, the same Ganga, because it changes moment to moment, but there is continuity. So likewise, the mind-body continuum, propelled by unresolved karma, because basically if you want to understand why there is rebirth, you have to look at the 12 links, which is something I didn't write down before I started this talk. But basically it's like, because we grasp at self, and we create duality, we create the idea of this me and the rest of the world, and then we create grasping. I want this feels good, this confirms myself. I don't like things that threaten my concept of self, and therefore I have aversion to those things, hatred even. And I have indifference to the things that neither confirm nor harm my self-existence. So based on this grasping, then we create, kind of karmic actions, and then we have effect, and then we have birth, old age, sickness, death, and so the wheel turns. So that's why Buddhists say worldly existence. So mind-only school Buddhists would say that, so there's lots of different philosophical schools within Buddhism, but they say that the alaya vijnana, the mind's, the storehouse consciousness carries the seeds of karma. And those old-fashioned lottery balls that they used to go around in this big plastic bubble? All the numbers would roll around, and then 10 numbers would be spat out. That's kind of like rebirth, like all your karmic seeds, you die, and then all your karmic seeds roll around, and the numbers spit out whatever karma is closest to ripening, spits out, and then you're born in a certain place as a certain gender with certain conditions, due to past karma, mostly because you don't have a choice. It's uncontrolled rebirth, because we live with craving, right? And we have countless lifetimes worth of karma. And to understand this concept of rebirth, you need to understand that Buddhists and Hindus don't view time and reality the way Brahmanical religions do. Brahmanical religions, or theistic religion, Judeo-Christian religions view time as a line, beginning and alpha, omega. Buddhism and Hinduism, and maybe Taoism, I'm not sure, view time as a circle, no beginning, no end, because everything is connected and created through cause and effect. And it's like splitting hairs, or splitting like the fluff on dandelions, like you split them, and you split the non-self elements, and then you split them down to further non-self elements, and so on and so forth until infinity. And you literally can't find a beginning, because everything is part of everything else in this infinite web, right? So it becomes infinity. So how do we get out of this wheel, right? How do we get out of this wheel of craving and birth and death? So Buddhists would say, collect a great store of virtue, purify your mind, do no unwholesome deed. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So through purifying the mind, what is already there, just like when you have a jar of dirty water, if you always shake it, it will always be cloudy. But if you just let it settle, the dirt settles to the bottom, and the water becomes clear. So likewise, the mind, when you let it settle, the radiance of luminous awareness, or the purity of mind, the innate seed of awakening in us starts to grow. So the Buddhist practitioner aims to create circumstances for their awakened potential to grow, and for their negative emotions to be reduced, like cut down and then pulled out by the root through direct experience, which we call vipassana. Not the kind of vipassana they do with Goenka, but the word means insight. Direct insight into our selfless nature. And when someone tells you, you've got cancer, you're going to die, you're like, you really have one of those paused moments where it's like things freeze, time slows down. And it's like when you're almost hit by a truck or something, and you just have this moment where you just see your life flash before you, and you have this sense that reality isn't quite as you perceive it to be. And it's like a dream, So death is life and life is death, because we're dying every moment. Our old self is always changing. We're not the same person we were when we were 20 or when we were 40, and we're not the same person we'll be in 10 or 15 years' time. People change us, traveling changes us, jobs change us, joy changes us, betrayal and trauma change us. But the point is to walk lightly, and to not allow anything to make you too heavy, too concrete, too much grasping. Because when our mind becomes dull and full of grasping, and makes the world very solid, and we're very solid in our actions and our opinions, that is probably when we are furthest from luminous awareness and liberating freedom of the heart. But understanding that we will die and we can't take anything with us, it becomes clear that actually, of course we still need to survive, we still need to make money, whatever, but the main point is to awaken and to have compassion and to treat others with kindness, because we're all just travelers, you know, like, and it's like, if you think life is like a hotel, you know, when you come to a hotel, you enjoy the hotel, you watch the TV, you eat the nuts at the bar, you throw the towel on the floor, you have a bath, you have a fun time. But there is this lightness of heart, understanding this is not my true home. You know you're going to leave. And so this human life, enjoy yourself within the bounds of wholesomeness, enjoy, be merry, but understand ultimately this is not your true home. And to find a refuge of peace in this hotel of life, a true home. And then when death comes, you won't be so afraid, because you have known all along that this was going to happen and that you are impermanent. And you also have a sense of the deathless, have a sense of the part of you that is beyond birth and death, and I'm not so invested in the body, how it appears, how society value judgments, whatever. Because the true spiritual adept knows, rich or poor, good looking, fat, thin, tall, young, whatever, all of these kind of dualities are, they still may have some kind of function in the world, but for the person who has realized, they see through these things as just not so solid. They can see the living force behind those things. They see those things only as a shell. So in terms of how, so we shouldn't be dismissive of real world realities, because if somebody comes to you and says, I'm really sick, I'm dying, and you say, oh, you have a deathless nature, it doesn't matter, if a woman is 35 and she's got 3 kids, and you don't tell her, your life doesn't matter, you're impermanent, you need to just focus on finding peace. You've got to just be with people where they're at, and not be dismissive of real world realities or oppression, because all those things still matter. But it's a question of engaging with them enough, because these things matter, but also not becoming completely lost in those things. So in terms of Tibetan Buddhism and the process of dying, they say you should try to be in a peaceful state of mind and make amends, if there's things, negative actions you need to confess that you regret, it's good to find someone you trust, and monk or a nun or a teacher, good practitioner, and just, get those things off your chest, and try to make amends. If there's people that you would like to, say something to, write a letter if they're not there, and try to not hold on to things unnecessarily. Like, I've seen people who, they divided up their property, they divested themselves of a lot of their possessions, and they started living really simply and joyfully and in the present. And I really admire that, people who can accept that this is happening, and make things lighter for their friends and family, and there's less fighting, when it's all clear and it's all done. And just, those people just started really living in the present, and just enjoying, the simple things, like a cup of tea with a friend, or a bit of sunshine, sitting in a chair in the sun, or, reading a good poem, they just become very, it's all about just appreciating whatever moments of life are left to you. I mean, death sucks, sickness sucks, And it's really sad that we have to leave our loved ones in this beautiful world. No one wants to die, and it doesn't feel fair. Um, but it just happens, and it's easy. It's better if we accept this truth and make peace with it, and live fully whatever time is left to us, rather than constantly fighting against it. I think we live in a society where we rush for comfort very quickly, and we also wrap ourselves in a lot of illusion to protect ourselves from the brutality of life. And that's fairly human, but it doesn't always help us to live life more fully. If we're always hiding from what is really happening. Like we really hide from death, we hide away bodies. Whereas in the old days they would have a wake, they would have the body there in the room, on the bed. There's grandma. And children could make peace with that. In India, they have corpses everywhere. Like they just, they have a wake. Everybody comes. So they say, anyway, be in a peaceful place. It's okay to take pain relief, but Tibetan Buddhists would say not, like, try to keep a clear mind. But if you're in agony, it's better to be on pain relief than in a lot of pain. And I know some Theravada monks saying people even who were heavily medicated sometimes wake up, even though they're heavily medicated, and have this moment of clarity. Death is not always easy. It's not just, angels waiting to welcome you home. It can be painful. But Tibetan Buddhists describe the process of dying. It could be over many days, or it could be like almost instant. But they describe the element of earth dissolving into the element of fire. And this is where you lose the use of your arms and legs. And then your body becomes very hot, and there's a lot of sweat. And this is fire, earth dissolves into water. So you might feel like your arms and legs are very hot, or like you're being crushed under earth, and they'll say, pull me up, and then water dissolves into fire. So maybe they lose control of their lower bodily functions, and they, sometimes they have this kind of wheezing in their breath, and then there is this heat in the center of the body, and they start to sweat a lot, and then the fire element dissolves into the air element, and this is where you'll find the arms and legs become cold, and there is this kind of death rattle, and that can go on for quite a while. But it really does sound like a baby's rattle, like a wooden baby rattle. And then there is clinical death. They stop breathing, but the awareness can stay in the body for many days. And it may take the person a while to realize they've died. And at this time, Buddhists say it's better to lay the body out and not touch the body, and be very peaceful, not have people talking, wailing, and even people should watch their minds, because often the deceased person can be clairvoyant. If you're just going, cool, grandma's dead, I get a lot of inheritance. That can really disturb the mind of the deceased person. And it's good to, invite someone to say prayer, like Buddhist prayers, or, if the person was Christian, then say Christian prayers, and do good deeds on their behalf, like donating to charity. And so Tibetans would read this text, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it starts something like, O child of noble family, the time of death has come. Do not feel bad, this happens to everyone. You are not alone in leaving this world. Do not have fear, but gather your mind with concentration and look for, feel this luminous awareness. Merge your mind into the clear light. In the following days, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will appear before you, and they're the various realms of the 6 realms of existence, which are all impermanent, but appear. Hell, the hunger ghost realm, the animal realm, the human realm, the demigod realm, and the God realm. God being like a temporary, very good karma existence where you have a lot of physical enjoyment. And so a Buddha, one of the 5 Buddha families, like Amoghasiddhi, who is green, Ratnasambhava, who is yellow, Vairocana, who is white, Akshobhya, who is blue, Amitabha, who is red, and another Buddha, I can't remember, will appear along with the 6 realms. And they say, being, as a result of anger, we're born in hell. As a result of miserliness and greed, we're born in the hungry ghost realm. As a result of ignorance, we're born in the animal realm. As a result of desire, we're born in the human realm. As a result of good karma tainted by jealousy, we're born in the demigod realm. And as a result of good karma tainted by pride, we're born in the God realm. And you could view these 6 realms as states of mind as well, like the negative emotions that we rotate through in a day, even, or a year. So Tibetan Buddhists describe this thing called the bardo, which is, it means an in-between state. There is the bardo of birth, the bardo of this life, the bardo of dreams, the bardo of the moment before death, and the bardo of the in-between state, which is a bit like a train station. You know that movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore in the 80s? All the Tibetans were very enamored of that movie because that's how they view the bardo. Like, sometimes people don't realize they've died. But basically it's like a big train station and you're looking for a rebirth, basically. And they say it can take up to 49 days to sometimes even years, if you've got unprocessed stuff. People can hang around a house. They can be attached, especially if they were like murdered or, they died traumatically. They haven't realized they're dead. They're still holding on, But basically, it's usually 49 days to find a rebirth. And in the first part, they are hanging around their family and they're watching as people divide up their stuff and they're like, hey, I'm here, and people can't see them. And then over time, they start to feel less attached to their old life, and they'll see a lot of scary things. They might see other disembodied beings. It's a bit scary, and you're very uncertain, and you feel a bit sad and lost. And then, gradually, along with these beings that appear, this bright light, other beings appear pulling you towards one of the 6 realms. And you may not have a lot of choice about it. You feel compelled, or you even imagine imaginary beings chasing you. A bit like someone who's having a psychotic break, who perceives things that are happening even though they're not really happening, driven by karma. Their mind perceives these things. Basically, the advice is to try to rest in the nature of mind, call on the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to guide you, recollect the virtuous things you've done in your life, and to look for a precious human rebirth, because the human world is the perfect combination of suffering and freedom to practice, to motivate you. And they say it's like a blue light appears, and that is the human realm. All of the other realms are not ideal circumstances to practice for liberation. But you kind of, and they say that you recognize the clear light nature of mind, the luminous awareness of mind, through meditation in this life and an introduction to the nature of mind from a qualified teacher. And then you stabilize your understanding of that nature of mind. And when the moment of